The crying pierced through the empty parking garage like a siren in the dead of night. Marcus Thompson froze, his hand halfway to his car door, grocery bags weighing down his other arm. It was 11:47 p.m., and the underground garage beneath the abandoned Riverside Mall was supposed to be empty, had been empty for 3 years since the place shut down. But that sound, that was unmistakably a baby's cry echoing off concrete walls. Before we dive into this incredible story that will restore your faith in humanity, make sure to smash that subscribe button, because tomorrow, we have an extraordinary tale about a homeless veteran whose life changed forever when he returned a lost wallet. Marcus set his groceries on the hood of his 10-year-old Toyota, his construction boots echoing as he moved toward the sound. His daughter, Amelia, just 7 years old, was safe at home with his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, probably already asleep. He'd worked a double shift laying foundation at the new hospital site, his back aching, hands raw despite the work gloves. All he'd wanted was to grab the discounted groceries from the 24-hour market and get home. But now, as the crying grew louder, more desperate, every paternal instinct in his body screamed at him to investigate. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, half of them dead, casting strange shadows between the pillars. Marcus pulled out his phone, activating the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating abandoned shopping carts, graffitied walls, and then there it was. A silver sedan, dust-covered and alone in the far corner of the garage. The crying was coming from inside. His heart hammered as he approached. Through the rear window, he could make out a car seat. Inside, a baby, maybe 8 months old, red-faced and wailing, tiny fists pumping the air. Marcus tried the door handle. Locked. All the doors were locked. The windows were cracked just slightly for air, but not enough to reach through. That's when he saw a white envelope tucked under the windshield wiper. With trembling hands, he pulled out the note. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. Her name is Hope. I've tried everything. Lost my job, lost our home. Her father died in Afghanistan, no family left. CPS will take her Monday morning. I can't let her go into the system. Please, whoever finds her, give her the love I couldn't provide. I'm sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry, Claire. Marcus's throat tightened. He looked back at the baby Hope, whose cries had softened to hiccuping sobs. She had curly black hair, just like Amelia when she was that age. Her little romper was clean, a fresh diaper visible, a half-empty bottle rolled to the floor. Someone had tried to make sure she'd be okay for a little while. But how long had she been here? Marcus didn't hesitate. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911. But as it rang, something made him pause. He thought about his sister Keisha, how she'd bounced through foster homes after their mom died, how it had broken her in ways that never fully healed. He thought about this Claire, somewhere out there in the night, probably watching from the shadows to make sure someone found her baby. The desperation it must have taken to leave your child like this. 911? What's your emergency? Marcus started, then stopped. I found an abandoned baby. Riverside Mall parking garage, lower level. She seems okay, but she needs help. We're dispatching units now, sir. Please stay with the child. As he waited, Marcus tried the doors again, searching for any way in. The baby Hope had stopped crying now, her dark eyes fixed on him through the window. She reached out a tiny hand toward him, fingers spread like a little star. Hey there, sweet girl, he murmured, placing his palm against the glass. Help's coming. You're going to be okay. Hope's hand pressed against the window where his rested, and something shifted in Marcus's chest. He'd felt this before, 4 years ago, when he'd first held Amelia after her mother died in childbirth. That instant connection, that fierce need to protect. The police arrived within 10 minutes, followed by paramedics. They jimmied the lock, and a female officer carefully extracted Hope from the car seat. The baby immediately started crying again, reaching back toward Marcus. Sir, we'll need a statement, Officer Rodriguez said, notebook ready. Marcus recounted finding her, showed them the note. The officer's expression softened as she read it. Poor woman, we see this more than you'd think. Economic desperation makes people do desperate things. What happens to her now? Marcus asked, watching as the paramedics checked Hope's vitals. The baby seemed healthy, just scared and probably hungry. CPS will place her in emergency foster care tonight. Then the system takes over. The officer's tone was matter-of-fact but not unkind. We'll try to locate the mother, but given the note, Marcus thought about Keisha again, how she'd call him crying from different homes, how some were okay and some were nightmares, how she'd aged out at 18 with no real foundation, no real home. She'd gotten her life together eventually, became a nurse, but the scars remained. "Can I?" The words tumbled out before he could stop them. "I'm a licensed foster parent. Did the paperwork 2 years ago when my sister was going through a rough patch with her kids. Could Hope stay with me? Just until you find family or figure things out?" Officer Rodriguez studied him. "You said you're a single father?" "Yes, ma'am. My daughter Amelia is 7. I work construction, steady job, good hours, got a 2-bedroom apartment, clean record. I know it's unusual, but..." He looked at Hope, who had finally calmed down in the paramedic's arms but kept looking around, probably searching for her mother. "She's already been through enough tonight. What happens next will change 3 lives forever and show us that sometimes families are formed in the most unexpected ways." If you're touched by Marcus's compassion, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that prove humanity still exists in our darkest moments. Officer Rodriguez made some calls. It turned out the social worker on duty, Miss Patricia Williams, knew Marcus from when he'd done the foster training. After a quick background verification and a promise that this was just temporary emergency placement, they agreed. At 1:37 a.m., Marcus found himself installing a borrowed car seat into his Toyota. Hope bundled in his jacket because the night had turned cold. "This is just for tonight," Miss Williams emphasized, her voice tired but kind. "We'll do a home visit first thing in the morning, and I'll need to start the official paperwork. Are you sure about this, Marcus? You've already got a lot on your plate." Marcus looked down at Hope, who had grabbed his finger and wouldn't let go. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "I'm sure," he said, though his mind raced with logistics. Formula, diapers, clothes. Hope had nothing but what she was wearing, and a diaper bag with a few supplies. He'd figure it out. He always did. The drive home was surreal. Hope made soft cooing sounds from the back seat, and Marcus found himself talking to her, the same way he used to talk to Amelia during late-night drives when she couldn't sleep. "Your mama loves you," he said softly. "Don't you ever doubt that. Sometimes love means making impossible choices. She tried to give you a chance, and maybe that's what I'm supposed to do too." Mrs. Chin was still awake when they arrived, her door opening before Marcus could knock. The elderly woman took one look at the baby in his arms and didn't ask questions, just ushered them inside. "Amelia's sleeping on my couch," she whispered. "I'll help you get settled, then bring her over." Marcus's apartment had never felt smaller. He set up a makeshift crib using a dresser drawer padded with blankets, an old trick his grandmother had taught him. Hope fussed until he found the right temperature for her formula, then drank hungrily, her eyes never leaving his face. "Where did you come from, little one?" he murmured as she ate. "What's your story?" When Amelia stumbled in, rubbing sleepy eyes, she stopped short at the sight of the baby. "Daddy? Whose baby?" Marcus carefully explained, keeping it simple. "A baby who needed help, a safe place to sleep, maybe just for a little while." Amelia approached slowly, then reached out to touch Hope's hand. The baby grabbed her finger, and Amelia's face lit up with wonder. "She's so little, like my baby doll, but real." "Very real," Marcus agreed. "And she needs our help. Think you can be a big sister for a little while?" Amelia nodded solemnly. "I'll share my toys, and my blanket, the soft one." As the night wore on, Marcus found himself wide awake, watching Hope sleep in her makeshift bed. He thought about Claire, wondered where she was, whether she was safe. The note was tucked in his wallet, now evidence, the police said. But to Marcus, it felt like a sacred trust. His phone buzzed, a text from his foreman about tomorrow's shift. Marcus realized he'd need to figure out childcare, formula, everything. His savings were thin, stretched between rent and Amelia's needs. But looking at Hope's peaceful face, her little chest rising and falling with each breath, he knew he'd make it work. The next morning brought chaos. Hope woke, crying at 5 a.m. Amelia joined in out of sympathy, and Marcus discovered he'd forgotten how exhausting babies could be. Mrs. Chen appeared at 6 with arms full of supplies, formula, diapers, even some clothes her daughter had saved from her own kids. "Takes a village," she said simply, bouncing Hope while Marcus made breakfast. Miss Williams arrived at 8 for the home inspection. She toured the small apartment, noting the safety locks, the smoke detectors, The general order, despite the morning's chaos. Amelia had set up a welcome committee of stuffed animals around Hope's drawer bed. "It's temporary, miss," Williams reminded him again, but her tone was softer now, watching how naturally Marcus handled both girls. "We have to try to locate family, follow protocol." "I understand," Marcus said, though his arms tightened unconsciously around Hope. Days blended into a routine. Marcus negotiated with his foreman for earlier shifts. Mrs. Chin became their unofficial grandmother. Amelia appointed herself Hope's protector, reading her picture books and sharing goldfish crackers when Marcus wasn't looking. The drawer gave way to a proper crib from Goodwill. The emergency placement extended to a week, then 2. Marcus found himself scanning crowds wherever they went, looking for a desperate woman who might be watching from afar. He created a Facebook post with Hope's picture and a message. "She's safe. She's loved. No questions asked if you need to talk." It was shared hundreds of times, but no Claire came forward. What did come were bills. Formula was expensive. Diapers disappeared at an alarming rate. Marcus picked up weekend shifts when Mrs. Chen could watch both girls, his body protesting but his determination firm. Amelia never complained when dinners became simpler, when the fun outings stopped. She seemed to understand, in the way children sometimes do, that they were doing something important. 3 weeks in, Miss Williams called with news. "We found her," she said. "Claire Thompson. Marcus, she's in the hospital. Psychiatric hold. She tried." The social worker's voice caught. "She's alive, but barely." Marcus closed his eyes. Phone pressed to his ear. "Can I see her? That's highly unusual. Please, I have her daughter. She deserves to know Hope is okay." After some negotiation, they arranged a visit. Marcus left the girls with Mrs. Chen and drove to the county hospital, his stomach in knots. He wasn't sure what he expected, but the broken woman in the psychiatric ward bed wasn't it. Claire couldn't have been more than 25, thin to the point of gauntness, arms bandaged, eyes hollow. "Hope," she whispered when the nurse explained who Marcus was. "Is she?" "She's perfect," Marcus said, pulling out his phone to show pictures. "Happy, healthy, loves sweet potatoes and hates peas. Sleeps through the night mostly. Amelia, that's my daughter, reads to her every day." Claire's tears came silent and steady, looking at the photos. "I couldn't. I lost everything. Jason died in Kandahar 8 months ago. My parents disowned me when I got pregnant without being married. Lost my job when I missed too many days after Jason died. Eviction notice came last week. I couldn't let her go into the system, but I couldn't take care of her either." Marcus sat carefully on the edge of the visitor's chair. "You did what you thought was best. That took courage." "Courage?" Claire laughed bitterly. "I abandoned my baby in a parking garage. You made sure she'd be found. You left her safe, with supplies, with a note explaining. You put her needs first." Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. "That's not abandonment. That's sacrifice." They talked for an hour. Claire shared stories about Hope's first months, about Jason, about dreams they'd had for their daughter. Marcus told her about Amelia, about losing his wife, about rebuilding a life from grief. When visiting time ended, Claire grabbed his hand. "I'm supposed to want her back," she whispered. "That's what mothers do, right? Fight for their babies. But I look at those pictures, see how happy she is, and I want that for her. Is that wrong?" Marcus squeezed her hand. "There's no wrong in love, just different shapes of right." The drive home was quiet. Marcus found himself thinking about shapes of right, about families formed by choice rather than chance. When he walked in, Amelia was teaching Hope to clap, both girls giggling. Mrs. Chen watched from the kitchen, dinner simmering on the stove. "Everything okay?" she asked softly. Marcus watched his daughters, and that's what they were, both of them, regardless of paperwork, and nodded. Getting there. The legal process was complicated. Claire, once stabilized, made the hardest decision of her life. Voluntary termination of parental rights with Marcus as the preferred adoptive placement. There were interviews, home studies, court dates. Marcus's co-workers rallied, creating a fund to help with legal fees. His foreman adjusted schedules without being asked. Mrs. Chen testified about his character, as did teachers from Amelia's school. "Why?" the judge asked during the final hearing. "You're a single father, already stretched thin. Why take on this responsibility? Marcus looked at Hope, dressed in her best outfit, a hand-me-down from Mrs. Chen's granddaughter, babbling happily in Amelia's lap. Your Honor, 4 years ago, I became a single father in a hospital room, holding a baby whose mother had just died. I was terrified. I had no idea how I'd manage. But that little girl saved me as much as I saved her. She gave me purpose when grief could have swallowed me whole. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Hope came to us the same way through loss, through someone else's sacrifice. But she's teaching us the same lesson, that families aren't just made by blood, they're made by showing up, by choosing each other every day, by deciding that love is bigger than fear. Amelia, unable to stay quiet, piped up. And she's my sister now. I already taught her our secret handshake. Even the judge smiled at that. The adoption was finalized on a rainy Thursday in October. Claire was there, healthier now, living in a recovery house and working part-time. She'd asked to be present, to see it through. When the judge pronounced it official, she was the first to congratulate them. Thank you, she whispered to Marcus, for giving her what I couldn't. You gave her life, Marcus replied, and you gave us a family. We're the ones who should be thanking you. They agreed to letters, pictures, updates, not co-parenting, but not erasure either. Claire would be part of Hope's story, a brave woman who loved her daughter enough to ensure her safety and happiness, even at the cost of her own heart. 6 months later, life had settled into a new normal. Hope took her first steps in Mrs. Chen's kitchen, stumbling between Marcus and Amelia while a pot of dumplings steamed on the stove. The apartment was chaotic, toys everywhere, 2 beds crammed into the girls' room, Marcus sleeping on a pull-out couch in the living room. But it was home. The construction company had promoted Marcus to site supervisor, a position with better hours and slightly better pay. It wasn't luxury, but it was enough. Amelia had adjusted to sharing everything, even developing a fierce protective streak whenever anyone asked about her sister. She's my sister, she'd say firmly, daring anyone to suggest otherwise. Daddy found her, and now she's ours forever. One evening, as Marcus tucked both girls into bed, Hope grabbed his face with both chubby hands and said her first clear word, Dada. Amelia shrieked with delight. She said it. She finally said it. Marcus felt his eyes burn. He'd been Marcus to Hope in his mind, careful not to presume. But hearing that word, seeing the recognition in her eyes, feeling the certainty in her voice, it broke something open in him. Yeah, baby girl, he whispered. I'm your daddy. Always. Later, sitting on his pull-out bed with bills spread before him, medical, legal, everyday expenses, Marcus didn't feel the weight he once did. The numbers were the same, the challenges unchanged. But across the room, he could hear both girls breathing peacefully, could see the pictures Amelia had drawn taped to every wall. Stick figures labeled, me, Hope, Daddy, and Mrs. Chen in increasingly elaborate scenes, could feel the fullness of a life he'd never planned but wouldn't trade for anything. His phone buzzed. A message from Claire. How is she? Marcus sent back a video from earlier that day. Hope and Amelia having a dance party to a kid's song, both in tutus Mrs. Chen had found at a yard sale, giggling uncontrollably as they spun in circles. Perfect, Claire texted back. Thank you for loving her. Thank you for trusting me too, Marcus replied. As midnight approached, Marcus did what he always did before sleep, checked on his girls one more time. Amelia had kicked off her covers as usual. Hope had somehow rotated completely in her crib, feet where her head should be. He adjusted them both, whispered goodnight, and stood in the doorway for a moment. 3 years from now, Hope would start preschool in the same class Amelia had attended. 5 years from now, Amelia would write an essay about her hero, her dad, who worked hard and loved harder. 10 years from now, at Hope's adoption anniversary party, a tradition they'd start next year, Claire would attend as Aunt Claire, clean for 8 years and working as a counselor for other struggling mothers. But Marcus didn't know any of that yet. All he knew was that on a cold night in an abandoned parking garage, he'd heard a baby cry. He'd made a choice to answer that cry, just as someone had once chosen to help him in his darkest hour after his wife died. Sometimes the families we're born into shape us. But sometimes the families we choose to build out of loss, out of hope, out of stubborn love save us in ways we never expected. As Marcus finally drifted off to sleep, he smiled, thinking of the note that started it all. Claire had named her daughter Hope, and that's exactly what she'd brought to all their lives. Not the fairy tale kind that erases struggle, but the real kind, the kind that says tomorrow can be better than today if we just keep showing up for each other. And in a small apartment in the city, where love stretched to fill every corner and then some, 3 hearts beat in rhythm, proof that sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the most broken ground. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that angels sometimes come in unexpected forms, please subscribe to our channel. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that hope can be found in the darkest places, and love multiplies when we open our hearts to those who need it most. Click on one of the 2 stories on your screen now for more tales that will restore your faith in humanity and remind us all why kindness matters.